session 5 of the day 2 of International Lyallpur History Conference. I would like to take an opportunity to talk about the person to whom this conference has been dedicated. This conference has been dedicated to K.K. Aziz, Khurshid Kamal Aziz, who was born in December 1927 in village Balmabad, Faisalabad. He held important positions in various national as well as international universities. He also served as Deputy Official Historian to the Government of Pakistan and a Special Policy Advisor to Prime Minister Zulfikar Ali Bhutto. Khurshid Kamal Aziz, commonly known as K.K. Aziz, wrote over a dozen of books. We are honored to dedicate this International Lyallpur History Conference 2024 to the greatest historians of our time, K.K. Aziz. To move towards our session 5 of the day, I would like to invite the chair of the session, Professor Dr. Mehboob Hussain from University of the Punjab, Lahore. Professor Dr. Mehboob Hussain is the chairman of the Department of History and Pakistan Studies and director of the Research Society of Pakistan at the University of Punjab. With 26 years of postgraduate teaching and research experience, he specializes in parliamentary studies and South Asian history. He has published over 40 research papers and served in various editorial roles, including editor of the Journal of Punjab University. Now I would like to invite the speakers for this session. Our first speaker for this session is Dr. N. Kastni from the Center of South Asian and Himalayan Study, France. Please welcome Dr. N. Kastni on the stage. Our next speaker is Mohammad bin Umar Hamid from KMA Institute of Creative Sciences. Please put your hands together to welcome Mohammad bin Umar. Our next speaker is Dr. Muhammad Irfan from Pakistan Private Limited. Please put your hands together to welcome Dr. Muhammad Irfan. Our fourth speaker of this panel is Faqiha Islam from Quaid-e-Azam University, Islamabad. Please welcome Ms. Faqiha Islam. Our fifth speaker for session 5 is Muhammad Safdar from the Islamia University of Bahawalpur, Bahawalnagar campus. Please warmly welcome Mr. Muhammad Safdar. This paper of Mr. Muhammad Safdar has been co-authored with Dr. Gulzar Ahmed from the Islamia University of Bahawalpur, Bahawalnagar campus. Over to you, Professor Dr. Mehboob Hussain.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Thank you, Dr. Khola. First, I would like to thank the organizers of the conference, especially Musaddiq Zulkarnain Sahab, Sadr, Lyallpur Literary Council, then Dr. Khola Iftikhar, then Tawheed Chattha Sahab. I really feel honored being part of this important academic activity with the distinguished panelists who gather here from throughout the country and outside the country. The theme of this session is Systematic Transformation and Sustainable Features, Social Dynamics and Climate Challenges in Punjab. 5 papers going to present in this session. So first, I would request to Dr. Annie Casting. The title is Kingsway Camp, The Anatomy of Silence. So over to you, Dr. Casting.
Okay, thank you so much for this presentation. And I would like to thank again all the organizer and the conveners of the conference. And I'm so happy to be here in Lyallpur. And thank you for your warm hospitality, even invitation and hospitality. So I was a bit surprised to be in this panel because you will understand very soon I'm not working on environment. except if you consider refugee camp as an environment. It is an environment, but not in the sense I think we will be speaking of it here. So I am presenting a paper now on Kingsway Camp, on this anatomy of silence, which is a project in progress, and I'm going to drop here several ideas and questions for the construction of a scholarship on partition refugee camps, focusing on one of them, which is Kingsway Camp. And I would be most happy and grateful to have your comments and suggestions on this project. So this paper, as I told, is focusing on Kingsway Camp. Okay, this is Kingsway Camp, which was located in northern Delhi in the area of civil lines, which was opened late 1947 and closed in 1955. During its 8 years of existence as a refugee camp, Kingsway sheltered about 500,000 Hindu and Sikh refugees, men, women, and children, most of them from West Punjab urban areas, and I must say from Faisalabad, from Lyallpur also. I have some numbers, but I don't know if it's interesting to discuss it here. So Kingsway was the largest refugee camps in the city of Delhi, which housed several camps of different types, camps of arrivals for Hindu and Sikh refugees from Western Punjab, or camps of departure for departing Muslims, Purana Kila and Humayun's tomb notably. So my research on this camp is still in its early stage, but this case study allows me to drop crucial issues involved in the memorialization of partition on the one hand, and on the use of sources in the constitution of a scholarship such as the one of partition on the other hand. So for many, 1947 partition has been considered as a massive catastrophe in the north of the subcontinent and has been examined as a long process, as a long process, a long partition, according to a very common expression, whose consequences are still vivid. I will show that although partition has had a complex historiography, it has been told here also, marked by a partition turn or a partition mania in the 1990s, many gray areas remain, and the problematic memory bears witness to India and maybe Pakistan, ambiguous link with its recent history. So, as a literary scholar working on partition, Kingsway represents to me a challenge, but also a means. This project, called Biography of a Camp, starts from an absence in the history of partition, but also from a seemingly lack of available historical sources to tell the story of the life of the camp and the life in the camp. I will show how this inadequacy can be negotiated by relying on various sources, in particular memoirs and life stories, but also fiction that bears witness to the perception of the camp as a mental representation, as a language, as an image, as an intimacy, as an habitus. Requiring a cross-disciplinary methodology, Kingsway Project provides material for reflection on the fruitful dialogue between the literary and the historical, between text and historiography. So this is a plan I will try to follow if I have time. So if I don't have time, I won't follow it. So I will start with very brief elements on the historiography of partition. As you all know, partition happened nearly 80 years ago and is still subject to historical discussion and a rich field of research, indeed of discovery, that can shed light on both the past and, of course, the present. It has been said this morning. So obviously, partition cannot be summed up to a single date. It is a long partition, it is a long process, and its effects are still vivid in the present. Nearly 50 million people would have crossed the western and eastern borders between 1947 and 1950. But Bengal experienced a much more gradual migration over several decades. As historians have shown, the precise number of victims remain difficult to establish, mainly because of the random nature of violence and riots and the absence of police archives. For example, sources provide figures ranging from 200,000 to 2,000,000 dead, depending on whether they are, I quote, the English estimate of the time or later Indian estimate. This is Urvashi Butalia. Population movements did not only concern the border areas, they were not limited to the years 1947-1950, as shown by the Bengali case, where the flood of refugees was not as impressive as in Punjab, but did not really stop until 1971. The major migration that took place in 1947 and the years that followed deeply modified the northern area of the Indian subcontinent from east to west, and modified also the cities. It has been said this morning also, but this is a very important fact, over generations. So for obvious reasons, the glorification of the newly independent nations, undermined by partition as a human catastrophe, Indian national history only took on partition very partially and very late. On the other hand, fiction, and in particular short stories, provided a particularly rich reservoir for 1947 memory of massive violence, including rapes and abduction, exile, life in the refugee camps, and the resettlement of refugees. From 1947 onwards, hundreds of short stories, novels, and poems were written in more than 10 languages, including Urdu, Hindi, Punjabi, Bengali, and English, depicting partition and the tragedy of refugees. So these are several anthologies that has been published in the 1990s. Anthologies of short story from different languages and translated into English. So these anthologies were followed by various publications, reissues and translations. Obviously, fiction helped revealing unknown or little known aspects of partition, gender-based violence, for example, that later on gave rise to seminal academic publications. Besides, the partition mania of the 1990s was accompanied by vast campaigns of oral history, as we all know, embodied, for example, by the huge project 1947 partitionarchive.org, among many others. So certain aspects of partition, such as communal violence, gender violence, were examined in depth, becoming commonplaces in the collective history of partition. Train attacks, fratricides in villages, and women abduction were all widely portrayed in literature and film. In contrast, refugee camps, despite their strong presence in fiction, remained almost unexplored. Academic literature on refugee camp is fairly limited, whether it concerns India with the recent work of Rotem Geva, Pallavi Chakrabarti, and Ravinder Kaur, notably, or Pakistan with the work of Wazira Zamindar, Elizabeth Ayoub, and Ilyas Chattah, for example. As far as I know, there are no comparative studies on camp management in India and in Pakistan which could shed light on the refugees' policies of the two states and the management of the post-partition period. So I would like here to very briefly question the issue of the sites of memory. It is, of course, interesting and necessary to see camps as sites of memory when the memory of partition remain problematic. So at the heart of the politics of partition memory, and obviously of the memorialization of refugee camps, is the issue of the sites of memory, les lieux de mémoire. Sorry, I say it in French because it comes from French, I'm sorry. The material turn of the history of partition, embodied, for example, by the creation of one and then two museums of partition in India, in Amritsar in 2016 and in Delhi in 2023, and a partition hall in the Museum of National History Museum in Lahore, which was built in 2016, clearly bear witness to a global demand for a material memory, which, regarding partition, is still not provided. What about in the public space? The history of 10 million refugees. What about the history of 2 million dead? The very nature of partition violence, as I said, or at least its representation, may explain the absence of sites of memory for partition. Partition violence has been described as a random violence, and the sites of violence, consequently, being perceived and told as random also. That the representation of partition focused on a series of typical locations, such as the train compartment, the Punjabi village, the refugee camp, contributed to this delocalization, to the othernessization of partition. Typical locations are perceived as symbolic spaces outside time and space, designed to stage characteristic situation. In a way, as many would say, partition paradoxically took place everywhere and nowhere. So I'm going to skip now to Kingsway. So this is a camp. This is a very famous photo of a camp. Many of you must know. It's not Kingsway camp. I think it's in Humayun's tomb. So I'm not sure. So in 1947, facing massive migration, India and Pakistan both had to open more than a dozen vast refugee camps to accommodate the millions of refugees crossing the border and to facilitate their departure. So these camps were hurriedly organized in Punjab, in Kurukshetra, who was considered as the largest refugee camp in Punjab, who housed almost 500,000 people until it was closed at the end of 1948. The Vaga camp, located in Vaga, the Indo-Pak border. The Bahadur camp in Haryana. Walton camp in Lahore. Nagroda camp in Kashmir. Cooper's camp in Bengal, but also in Karachi and also in Delhi. As many has shown, the face of Delhi deeply changed after 1947, with more than 500,000 Hindu and Sikh refugees arriving overnight. 1/3 of the population was displaced persons. Of course, the term itself, refugee camps, needs to be qualified. I don't know if I have the time here to do it, but there is three. It has been said there was three kind of camps: transit camps, concentration camps for people living, and refugee camps for people arriving, which was the case of Kingsway. So, as I said, Kingsway was the largest camp. It has 62 hectares, and it accommodated almost 500,000 refugees, mainly urban Hindu and Sikh families, as I told. It originally consisted of 4 military barracks left over on a large ground with tents to complete the living quarters. Kitchen blocks, bathrooms and latrines were built, and additional water supply and drainage were laid. In May 1948, a fire broke into the camp and caused great damages. By 1952, 2,950 tenements were constructed, consisting in a room and in a cooking veranda, along with 200 shops, 2 schools, dispensaries, and a maternity hospital. Kingsway, with the help of social workers, also provided work centers. So this is photos of these work centers. These photos, of course, are giving a very positive narrative of the refugee camps. I'm not sure this can be representative of what happened in the camp. That one of my projects, to see what was happening of the camp. But these photos are showing the resilience of refugees with the help of the social workers in Kingsway. So Kingsway was also the most persistent camp and had to compensate for the closure of Punjab's refugee camps, notably Kurukshetra, after 1947. 1948. It remained open as a refugee camp until 1955, which suggests that some of the refugees stayed for almost 8 years waiting for rehousing. Rehousing was based on the allocation of housing left vacant by Muslims leaving to Pakistan, as well as on the construction of entire colonies in Delhi. And this is two maps of Delhi, one you see in 42 and in 56. I wish I had 47 and 50, but I don't. So you can see the construction of the colonies in northern Delhi, sorry. So Delhi's history has been deeply marked by partition, demographically, architecturally, culturally. For at least a decade, the city had to bear the burden of a very concrete memory of the failure of independence, as witnessed, for example, in the Hindi fiction of the 1950s with the emergence of a new story movement full of melancholy and urban wanderings. So this is a novel, Sarah Akash, published in 1952, which is really representative of the melancholy in Delhi at that time. So I get back to my project, this biography of a camp, which aims to mobilize and cross-examine various sources, as I told, in order to document the political life. It is clear that camps are political, but also the institutional life, but also the social life and the intimate life of the camp and its inhabitants. As I said, Kingsway Camp has been poorly documented, but sources of all kinds do exist. The National Archives of India is full of institutional archives from the Ministry of Relief and Rehabilitation, and the Prime Minister Memorial Library in Delhi provides a number of police reports describing incidents linked to Kingsway and Kingsway refugees, fires, protests, hunger strike, notably. These are some examples. So certain NGOs active in the camp, such as YMCA and Relief Welfare Ambulance Corps, can also provide archives that can be useful. And another document that is very useful is this book, this study of Kingsway Camp, which was a command which provides a detailed overview of Kingsway population between 1947 and 1952 by geographical origin, and that's how I know that there was people, refugees from Lyallpur in Kingsway, by occupation, gender, family composition, age, etc. But it also reveals the agenda of the Ministry of Relief and Rehabilitation, which was mastering the refugee question, taking charge of their daily lives, glorifying rehabilitation, the success of independence, through the resilience of refugees. I'm very late, so I will conclude. Saying that sources of another type, such as life stories and fiction, allow to document what police reports also suggest, with the mention of protests, demonstration, and hunger strikes, the physical, social, and psychological distress of refugees, their agency formulated in their own stories, their intimate life, in a collective place where intimacy is precisely problematic. mobilizing personal stories, memoirs and diaries in order to document collective tragedies has much been discussed in different contexts, but also in particular on partition itself. No, I just want to conclude on my methodology, but I think it's going to be short, to justifying why I want to use fictional sources to document the King's West camp. So I think my time is off. Yes? So I think I will leave that for questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Casting. Dr. Casting has highlighted the Kingsway Camp, Delhi, through oral history. She feels the needs of the mobilization of more intimate resources and sources. She also has explored the narrative methodology. So now we have a very young scholar, that is Muhammad bin Umar Hamid from Institute of Creative Sciences. Muhammad bin Umar Hamid, a student with a passion for content writing and video editing, he's going to talk on unrevealing the Faisalabad's identity dilemma.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum. I'm Muhammad bin Umar Hamid from Lahore. I want to admit that these 2 days of presentation have been very beneficial for me as a novice and amateur student. I want to request all of you that please do not compare my presentation with the expert sessions. As you can see, my idea for today's presentation is unraveling the Faisalabad identity dilemma. यहाँ मैं आपको एक बात बताता चलूँ, मैंने अपनी ज़िंदगी के पहले 7 साल फैसलाबाद में गुजारे हैं. जाहिर है कि उस वक़्त मुझे किसी बात का इल्म नहीं था. अब तो मैं लाहौर में रहता हूँ, मगर मेरे नाना फैसलाबाद से बिलोंग करते हैं, और जब भी उनसे फैसलाबाद के मुतालिक बात होती है तो वो कभी फैसलाबाद का नाम इस्तेमाल करते हैं, मगर ज़्यादातर वो लायलपुर कह जाते हैं. So basically, this story starts from the dual name of the city, and after hearing different perspectives about changing the name of the city, I am scared. मैं खौफज़दा हूँ कि किसी दिन लाहौर का नाम भी बदल ना जाए. Although I don't believe in this theory, मगर मैंने सुना है कि लाहौर लाहू से है और लाहू राम का एक बेटा था. We have different reasons to change the name, and I wish it doesn't happen. By the way, let's come back to our topic. After writing this paper, I came to know that this type of study is known as toponymy, where you try to cope with the origins of the names of the city, its geography and identity. I want to assure you that I'm not even a student of this branch, but during the study, I came to know a place names hold the essence of cultural identity and memory. They tell stories about conquest, colonization, migration, capturing the layers of history that have shaped a region. In Pakistan, you can see this clearly with names influenced by everyone from the Aryans to the British. Naming a place is more than just a label. It connects to the identity of the place and its people. A mix of Islamic and non-Islamic names across the country reflects a rich tapestry and diverse cultural backgrounds, showcasing a region's complex past and the different people who have left their marks. हमारी रूट्स वादी सिंध की तहजीब से मिलती हैं. हम में अरबी, फ़ारसी और तुर्की असरात मौजूद हैं. आज भी हम में से काफ़ी लोग अर्तुगरुल गाज़ी के बहुत बड़े फ़ैन हैं और उसे अपना हीरो समझते हैं. अंग्रेज़ों की तसल्लुत ने इस रीजन पर बहुत से असरात छोड़े और मैं समझता हूँ कि हम आज भी शनाख्त के बहरान में मुब्तला हैं. मगर सवाल ये है कि हम शहरों के नामों को क्यों तब्दील करते हैं. This is a complex phenomena, but generally renaming cities in Pakistan often reflects shifts in power and cultural identity. It's about assuring a new identity, often with Islamic significance, which can stir up controversy, especially in the minority communities. अब हम थोड़ा फैसलाबाद की बात करते हैं. इन 2 दिनों में हमने फैसलाबाद के मुतालिक बहुत टॉपिक्स पे बात की और मैं समझता हूँ कि इस शहर के मौजूदा हालात सर जेम्स लायल के बगैर मुकम्मल नहीं. Starting from agriculture, Faisalabad's identity as a textile city is the evolution of a colonial idea. Now Lyallpur has evolved into a great commercial hub. The 1970s was an era of industrial growth for Pakistan, and this city turned into a great commercial hub for textile business in Punjab. We also know that the name of the city was also changed from Lyallpur to Faisalabad. It was named after Saudi King Shah Faisal, reflecting ties with Saudi Arabia. अब यहाँ ये सवाल है कि हमारा और सऊदी अरेबिया का क्या ताल्लुक है? Despite the connection with the Holy Land, there is also a dark side of the picture, often discussed by left-wing activists like me. Faisalabad's identity with Saudi Arabia has deeply influenced its socio-religious fabric. 1970 की दिहाई में सऊदाइजेशन ने पाकिस्तान के मजहबी रवायात को बदल कर रख दिया, जहां कदामत पसंद वहाबी और सल्फी अकायद ने जगह ले ली. This rose up sectarian violence and intolerance, marginalizing Pakistan's diverse cultural traditions. ख़वातीन की अवामी ज़िंदगी में शमूलियत कम हो गई और लिबास का कदामत पसंद म्यार आम हो गया. Saudi-funded Madras further enriched these conservative ideologies, reshaping Pakistan's religious and educational systems. इस असर ने पाकिस्तान के कसीर सकाफती वर्से को नुकसान पहुंचाया, जिसके नतीजे में मुल्क का समाजी और सकाफती तवाज़ुन मुतासिर हुआ. This is just one side of the story, and we cannot deny the significance of Saudi Arabia in funding Pakistan at many places. Overseas Pakistanis and also an income for the country, but this is not the topic I'm here to discuss about. मैं यहाँ ये बात करने आया हूँ कि फैसलाबाद के नाम की तब्दीली करने से इस शहर की शनाख्त और इज्तिमाई यादाश्त पर असर हुआ. क्या कोई पॉलिटिकल रीज़न थी इस अमल के पीछे? क्या हम इसे सिंबॉलिक इंटरेक्शनिज्म के साथ एसोसिएट कर सकते हैं? Phenomenological research designed using in-depth interviews and collaborating with existing literature. I used purposive sampling and conducted interviews with two important people meeting the criteria. Here I want to give thanks to one of my biggest supporters, Miss Saima Umar. इन्होंने मेरी सोचों को मुरत्तब करने और तहकीक के तौर पर सरपरस्ती करने में मेरी मदद की. Phenomenological analysis, thematic analysis and coding were used for data analysis. अब हम कुछ नताइज और बहस की बात करते हैं. फैसलाबाद के नाम की तब्दीली एक शिफ्ट की कोशिश थी फ्रॉम कलोनियल टू इस्लामिक आइडेंटिटी. एक शहर जो कभी मल्टी कल्चरल हेरिटेज का सिंबल था, अब इस्लामिक हेरिटेज से लिंक किया जाता है. ऑब्वियसली वी कैन नॉट डिनाई द पॉलिटिकल सिग्निफिकेंस. Once I met some Sikh tourists from India in Kartarpur and they called Faisalabad Lyallpur. नाम की तब्दीली नेशन की कलेक्टिव मेमोरी में कल्चरल लॉस का बायस बन सकती हैं. Obviously, we cannot deny the strategic alignment, like moving away from a South Asian legacy to a Arab-Muslim identity. And without any doubt, renaming reflects Saudi identity on Muslim identity formation. Still, financial benefits of changing the name are not clear at this time. This study uses the theory of symbolic interactionism to view the renaming of the city as a symbolic act that shapes the cultural identity and collective memory of local residents. The change from Lyallpur to Faisalabad symbolizes how alternating a name can influence the perception of identity and history. Obviously, there are limitations to this study, such as the limited number of participants and potential research bias. I am conducting an online survey about the renaming of the city. I request all of you to please fill this form for more authentic research in the future, as this research is still going on. My presentation will be uploaded on my father's YouTube channel, and you can see my slides on his research kit. Thank you.
Thank you, Muhammad bin Umar. Umar has unrevealed, with the help of 5 interviews, underlying the sentiments that the change of Lyallpur's nomenclature has brought. He has linked the change of the name with the change of the geopolitical and social thoughts. So, moving to the next scholar, he has a PhD in integrated water resource management from the US-Pakistan Center for Advanced Studies in Water, Jamshoro, Dr. Muhammad Irfan. He presented on the topic of rethinking agriculture production in the Indus Basin, path dependency, technocratic dynamics, and the need for sustainable transition.
Thank you, Chair, for giving me an opportunity to discuss about an important topic which we are discussing from the last 2 days. I first of all thank you, Lyallpur Literary Council, for organizing this important conference and also giving me an opportunity to present. So in next few minutes, I will basically explain that how canal enclosures in this area, especially in Faisalabad as well as in the overall Indus Basin, which we call it Indus civilization. So how the canal enclosures reshape human and nature relationship, and what are their consequences, and what is to be done in the next. So my question and my contribution in the debate is basically, the whole of my question is basically built on that how the implication of the modernizations, which officially the imperial literature is said that this is a modernization of agriculture, and before that modernizations, we are inefficient, we are unproductive, and that sort of theories are mostly floated. So my question is basically that to explore the implication of the modernization of agriculture through new canal enclosure in the Indus Basin, and the questioning what is lost in the process and identify the winners and the losers. And I also discuss how sustainable transition in the agriculture practices can help ensure food security and address inequalities stemming from the historical land allocations. In the previous literatures, if we go, pupils are discussing about how the canal enclosures basically reshape the political processes, political dynamics, and the social structure as well as the ecological consequences. But I will contribute that how and what type of farmer movements, collective actions need if we need a transitions from this existing path dependency of the colonialism. So I will, based on my methods, basically I did some archival research based on the district settlement reports, land revenue administration reports, census report, as well as the secondary literature review on this topic, and also the content analysis of the pre and the post canal colony agriculture policies, that how our official bureaucrats is basically conceptualizing the concept of agriculture and also the concept of the climate smart transitions and in the era of climate change, that how we need to be changed the current agriculture production model into a more sustainable and more climatically just agriculture production model. And I also basically interviewed as a scholar activist. My background is basically remained involved with different farmers movements in different eras and in different areas. So I explore the farmers' perspective, that what type of their challenges and how the current farmer movement in Pakistan is basically not conceptualizing the ecological consequences as their main ideological agenda, rather than they have basically historically based on different, demanding different land reforms and different type of other demands. But which type of agricultures need this area, which type of agriculture demand our ecology and environment. So this is not the agenda of the farmers movement. So I will look at that, what type of the reasons behind this. So little bit historical context of the Chenab and the Satluj Canal colony. So actually the historical transformation of the Indus basins, especially the Chenab and Satluj Canal colonies, basically stems from the agriculture changes in the basically due to the American Civil War. There is a basically disruption of the supply chain, of cotton supply chain of the British at that time. And then after this American Civil War, British rethink that how this supply chain of the cotton is basically can be shifted into the Indus Basin and into the Pakistan. So under this American Civil Wars, these canal colonies is basically shifted to Pakistan, and sorry, in the subcontinent at that time. So in the area of Pakistan as well right now. So but all these changes is basically and this change is very massive, and due to this political change, as a result of this political change, we see that Indus Basin is the largest irrigation systems in the world, covering almost 20 million hectares of the land, and it contributes to about 90% of the Pakistan's agriculture productions right now, and nearly the 20% of the GDP contribution. So whole this transformation is basically changed. This area is, environmental geography of this area is basically more semi-arid and arid conditions. So the geology of this area is also basically linked to that climatic conditions. But the intervention of the human intervention of the canal colonies is basically disrupt that human nature interactions, and they have any consequences very differently. So if we look at the social and economic impact on different structures, so as a consequence of all these changes, we see that the development led to the settlement of 7.5 lakh farmers between 901 to 1912, and 7 lakh between the 1912 to 1925 in the Chenab Canal Colony districts. Only the Chenab Canal Colony districts at that time, that is basically comprised of 8 districts. So this demographic change impact the relationship between the local and the settler populations in some area of the canal colonies, and the land alienation, basically allocation policies created differentiation among the peasantry, because the land allocations policy of the British at that time is also creating a basically peasant differentiations. They basically having a different type of land allocation policies, human land grant, military grants, and the capitalist grants, and the tenants grants. So those all land allocation policies also create a peasant differentiations. And then also the canal colonies and the canal schemes basically gives a control to control the water. So before that, water is not basically controlled by humans. So the canal gives a power to the bureaucracy to control the waters, and that control of water also creates more economic inequities. And there is a very famous saying at that time that Mod da Fakir te Pand da Samir. If you have a land on the head of the canal, while you might be you a beggar at the head, but you are more richer than the tail end richer peoples. So that's how the canal water allocations basically create more economic inequities, which basically strengthen the land inequity more. And as an impact of, if you see the economic impact, which is mostly the imperial sources and also the colonial sources is basically claiming that, and no doubt all these interventions have an economic impact. So the canal colonies basically provide almost 70 to 60 lakhs per annum. So if we look at the record of the 1928 land revenue record, so only the 8 canal colony districts that is basically comprised in the Chenab Canal Colony, so they basically provide more revenue as compared to the 21 districts at that time of the Punjab. So this is the huge economic impact. But all these economic and social impacts also have an ecological and climatic consequences. So before the canal colonies, farmers are basically irrigating their crops and irrigating their agriculture and the pastoralism based on the natural high and low flows of the rivers. So, but canal colony gives supply water whole the year. So that basically changes the water table rising, and also people are basically going to abandon the traditional dug well and the traditional groundwater wells. So abandoning of the groundwater wells and also the dug wells basically changes the water table rise. And those water table rise basically we can document that there human impacts and the health impacts. So those moisture level rises basically invite mosquitoes and the malaria, and there are tremendous number of basically fevers and the cholera, malaria we have faced, and there are a number of consequences. One of the report is basically highlighting that sometimes some of the villages basically lose 50 to 70% of their populations. So that is a huge amount that in a 1 year, 50 to 70% of the population is basically disappear due to all these ecological changes. And also the climatic impact of these canals, water allocation is basically also high. Within the 5 year, basically after the canal operational, so the rainfall basically increase 6 inches, 6 to 7 inches, from 16 inches rainfall average to 22 inches. So that's also a huge microclimate impact. So that's basically also impacting the groundwater and all those issues. So the next phase is basically after the canal colony is basically the post-partition scenario. So the bureaucracy of Pakistan and the hydraulic bureaucracy erected at that time is basically continue that path, and they basically still basically pulse, continue that push, and also adopted the green revolutions technologies, which also exaggerate the situations basically provided by the colonial legacy. So if we look at the different impacts, pupils are almostly in the bureaucracy reported that the green revolution technologies gives a huge production boom in the wheat and the rice, and it gives food security as well. But these production booms in the rice and the wheat and all other crops basically also associated with the high input intensity of the fertilizer, high input intensity of the pesticides. So the consumption of the pesticide and consumption of the fertilizers is increased more than 3 times, more than 4 times, more than 6 times, and it continuously increased. And this basically challenged the notion of that regenerative agriculture, that how the agriculture is basically more intensive towards the input and intensity, rather than the regeneration of the natural soil biota, soil degradation, and the soil organic material. So the organic material is basically reducing day by day, and we are basically relying on the input of the externals, fertilizer and the pesticide. And if you look at the green revolutions periods, that how from different period to period, the fertilizer consumption is increased almost. Currently, we are basically consuming 150 to 200 kg per hectare in the form of fertilizer. And if we see the consumption of the pesticides, that is 2 to 3 kg per hectare. So that is a huge, and these are also having a very much literature is basically empirical evidence provided that how these changes of consumption of fertilizer and the consumption of the pesticides impacting the human health as well. So the current challenges is basically instead of using high amount of fertilizer and a high amount of pesticides, still we are basically facing the stagflations. So currently, because the soil don't have any capacity to regenerate itself, so that's why we are facing stagflation of the production. So if we see the example of the wheat, so the wheat is basically, if we look at the data from 1991 to 2022, so the wheat is basically almost 0.12 tons per hectare per year we are basically reducing, instead of using high amount of fertilizer and the pesticide. So what we need to think about that how we can basically, how we can basically change these patterns. So what are the alternate options? So the alternate options are available. The agroecology and the climate smart agriculture approaches are very much there. But the conceptualization of the bureaucracy, the conceptualization of the agriculture and the irrigation technocrats are basically more dominant towards the colonial way of approaches and colonial way of dealing the agriculture. So if I look different agriculture policies and did a content analysis of those, that they basically use the notions and they use the wording that we are basically promoting climate smart practices. But on the name of the climate smart practices, they are promoting the same capitalist modeling and capitalist form of productions. So what I am basically trying to argue that, so what currently the agriculture policies and the agriculture organizations, reorganization of the agriculture is missing in Pakistani context is basically the social side, that how we can organize in a farmer movement and what type of collective actions of the farmers are required to assist for these transitions. So if we look at the examples of the China, if we look at the examples of Brazil, there is a very strong agroecology farmer movements present, and the idea of agroecology and the climate smart practices with a very much grounded political actions are available. But in Pakistan, I see the farmers movement are basically having don't idea to incorporate those ideas, basically due to the linkage of basically our link of farmer movements is basically break up in the 1990s, and the new idea of agriculture and to promote through the collective actions from the below is basically missing. So if we look at that whole which type of agricultures we needed right now, so we need to reorganize our farmer movement, and the farmer movement need to be addressed those challenges as well. Right now, they are basically, if we look at the Indian farmers movement, even in the Pakistan's Kisan Ittihad farmer movement, so they are basically focusing more on the input prices reductions, and they are basically electricity prices reductions, but they are not basically asking the fundamental questions that which type of sustainable agricultures this region and the future generations are required. So which type of sustainable transitions we need, and these type of questions are missing because the intelligentsia, the civil society link up with the farmer movement is break after the 1990. So this need to be restored because the intelligentsia gives the new idea to the movement, and the movement gives a more pressure to change the policies. So this is how the main argument I need to basically, this is a conclusion that there's no doubt that canal colonies created a huge impact on the economic side, but they are having a more ecological impact on the people of health and the overall the sustainability of this region. So what we need to do that the collective actions for this transition is missing in the present agency, and we need to introduce these collective actions. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Irfan Saab. Dr. Irfan talking with the help of the theory of the path dependency, that the mainstream issues related to the agriculture and their technocratic solutions during the British era and canal colonies. So our next scholar from Quaid-e-Azam University, Islamabad, she's basically MPhil student, and she earned gold medal from Namal during her outstanding performance in MS Pakistan Studies. She's going to talk on struggle for minority rights in Lyallpur, movements and legacies. Fakia Islam.
So my work is on the struggle for minority rights in Lyallpur movement and legacies. This presentation examines the multifaceted struggles of minority groups in Lyallpur, and my main focus is on the Christian minority in Faisalabad. So this is the roadmap to my presentation. I just skip it. The historical context. British colonial rule in India, including Lyallpur, brought significant changes impacting the social and political landscape, like the role of Christian Congress in Pakistan movement. The divide and rule policy aggravated the ethnic and communal tensions, which caused marginalization of many religious communities. Now, the theoretical framework and the research methodology. This studies draws upon intersectionality and institutional theory to analyze the marginality of minorities, their rights, and the struggles of minorities in Lyallpur. The research methodology I have used is the multidisciplinary approach, combining historical analysis, snowball sampling, and oral histories to understand the complexities of minorities and their experiences. In legal battles and political representation, minorities in Lyallpur actively engaged in legal battles to challenge discriminatory laws and policies seeking equal rights and representation. Political participations were limited for minorities. Minority leaders and organizations emerged to advocate for their rights, raising awareness about their concerns and mobilizing communities. Movement and legacies. Political communities like Hindu Mahasabha and All India Christian Associations left a lasting legacy of resistance and activism, inspiring generations to fight for social justice and equality. The discussion I have, in my paper, the discussion is about the impact of colonial policies, role of religious and ethnic identities, long-term implications, the role of religious and ethnic identities like Hindu marginalized caste. In Hindus, the specific role was of the marginalized caste because Hindus were in majority in the colonial and British rules, Christians, Sikhs, etc., and they have the long-term implications of their works. The main focus after the partition of Pakistan, I have discussed in my paper, is the role of Christian student movement. The Christian student movement is a very young organization which is working for the development of Christians in Pakistan. Christian student movement is newly organized movement that was founded on 12th of July 2022. It was founded by two young students. One of them is a Muslim and the other is a young Christian, Noman Amjad Uthwal. And the Muslim student was Muhammad Suleiman, and they both are the founding members of this young organization, Christian Student Movement. They have registered 1,500 Christian students and approached 30 universities. Christian Students Movement formed an executive body consisting of representatives from 10 districts, and now are expanded its activities to the 10 districts of Punjab. Movements and legacies of the minorities impacted the society in the way they increased the awareness about social justice and inclusive policies. They mobilized the political strength of minorities. They all left enduring legacies of activism, reminding us of the ongoing need to address the inequalities prevailing in our society. Concluding my article, the struggles of minority groups in Lyallpur provide a powerful testament to the enduring pursuit of equality and justice. This study represents a very positive side of this state. In this aristocratic society and monarchic political atmosphere, the young students of this state, of the Lyallpur, and the young educated youth is now accepting the minorities. They are now realizing that the differences among the societies and among the youth of the state. They are now working for their own fellows, for their own marginalized people. In the ongoing political scenario of the state, CSM is a bright star. It is showing that even though the state is viable as a system, but some individuals are imparting a soothing side by accepting diversity and supporting it to give a conclusive side to this youth. So this is all about my article. I appreciate you have listened to me. The Christian student movement is more inclusively and equitably is making this Lyallpur society is more inclusive to our minority groups, to the people of Pakistan, and we as a youth are very hopeful for this state, that this state will be a better place for every one of us, in living the thing that there is no religion, everything prior to everything is just a human being. So we all are, as an educated youth, are very hopeful for this. Thank you.
Thank you, Fakia. Her presentation about the struggle for minorities' rights in Lyallpur, her analysis covers the comprehensive overview of the achievements and the failures of the different minority rights movements. So we have last presentation, that is another topic on the change of the name of Faisalabad. So Lyallpur Faisalabad name change, beginning of decline of social norms. The experts and the scholar is Muhammad Safdar. He is a basically PhD scholar in Pakistan Studies Department, the Islamia University, Bahawalpur.
Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Assalamu alaikum. Sat Sri Akal and good afternoon. This is Muhammad Safdar, PhD scholar at the Islamia University of Lyallpur. My topic is Lyallpur Faisalabad name change, beginning of decline of social norms. This paper is an analysis of secondary sources that I have studied during preparation of this paper. Earlier, my young fellow, a young researcher, beautifully explained and elaborated the Lyallpur Faisalabad name change dilemma. So I try my best to go near to him. First of all, I thank my teacher, Dr. Khola Chima. She teaches us in the Islamic University Bahawalpur, Bahawalnagar campus. Dr. Saiba is a very good professional and has intellectual teaching abilities. But after spending 2 days here, I salute her, her management skills. God bless her. I've come here to express my tragedy that how can our cities and monuments be identified as those who destroy the social norms established by Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The study of historical evolution reveals that from Sandalbar, Rachna Doaba, and Chenab colony until Lyallpur, this region was ignorant of the terms majority and minority. It used to be the land of patriots, where farmers, laborers, writers, and artists were experts in their fields and had useful services for the society above the differences of color, creed, and race. Then with the change of name, it was felt that the decline in the deeds had started, and this decline gradually proved to be the death of societal norms. The objective of this paper are to acquire understanding of the decline of social norms in Faisalabad, to gain insight into the identity tragedy of Faisalabad. And my research questions are, how did this soil suddenly become ignorant of its inherited qualities? What is the right decision? Was it the right decision to sacrifice the city's identity in the name of the Saudi monarch? In response to the above, when we try to review the related literature, we observe that the gluttony of materialistic businessmen and the trickery of the merchants of religion use these beautiful streets and bazaars mercilessly. Consequently, the mercantile aristocracy consider themselves baptized by donating some coins to gain favorable fatwa from the coercive clergy class. This fatwa is an easy solution to silence the workers, peasants, laborers, etc. in the name of faith. So, from this model, we can easily understand the Saudi donors, business class, and politicians have common interests in Pakistan, and all of these are taking advantage of people's innocence with the help of religious middlemen. It is strange that the influence of this clergy class, peers, zakirs, Maulvis, etc., can also be seen in the homes of the liberal class, equipped with modern knowledge and modern education. If we eliminate these religious middlemen, we can achieve our target of peaceful atmosphere, peaceful community, peaceful society in the country and in the Faisalabad. Now look at what Ataturk did to eliminate the influence of these merchants of religion. In 1930, Ataturk publicly stated his views regarding religion with these words. Religion is a relationship between God and man, into which professional middlemen cannot be allowed. Such merchants of religion have deceived our simple and innocent people. It is they that you and I should fight against. Quaid-e-Azam also aimed to establish a democratic and inclusive state that upholds the principles of Islam and fully respect the rights of other religion communities, not minorities, and other religion communities of Pakistan. In his speech on August 11, 1947, he declared, "You are free. You are free to go to your temples. You are free to go to your mosques or to any other places of worship in the state of Pakistan. You may belong to any religion, caste, or creed that has nothing to do with the business of this state." Now, what should we do? Just as we work hard and struggle to earn a living, whatever religion or sect we belong to, we must also work hard to instill faith and belief in it. Only then we defeat the fabricated narrative of the clergy class. Secondly, we should not be a part of any political or economic bloc. By doing this, we can create our own unique identity by protecting the national narrative according to our national interests. In the end, I would like to leave a question before the distinguished audience. How long will we continue to pledge the identity of our cities and monuments to the name of those who are not ready to recognize us than a slave, even this postmodern era? Thanks.
Safdar has dignified the social fabrics of Sandalbar and contends that the religious and economic encroachments have overcome the simplicity of the Lyallpur city. And that is one of the cause of the change of the name. So now session is open, or the house is open, or the floor is open for the question answer session. You just raise your hand and our volunteers come to you. Yes.
सर एक क्वेश्चन है सफदर साहब से। कल भी मैंने ये बात सुनी थी जहाँ के नाम चेंज से बहुत सी नॉर्म्स एंड वैल्यूज़ एंड शहर की आइडेंटिटी चेंज हुई है। आज भी यही बात है। जहाँ तक मुझे याद पड़ता है कि लायलपुर का नाम 1892 में दिया गया था और जस्ट 8 बाज़ारों का नाम लायलपुर था। इससे पहले 1876 में जड़ावाला भी मौजूद था, उससे पहले टोबा टेक सिंह भी मौजूद था, उससे पहले समंदरी भी मौजूद था, जुमरा भी मौजूद था, झामरा भी मौजूद था। इस सब के होते हुए जब हमने 1892 में लायलपुर 8 बाज़ार रख दिए, 1902 में हमने तहसील लायलपुर रख दी, 1904 में हम उन सब इलाकों को जो पुराने इलाके थे उनको शामिल करके लायलपुर डिस्ट्रिक्ट बना दिया। उसके बावजूद उसकी आइडेंटिटी को इतना ख़तरा नहीं उन इलाकों को हुआ। तो जब हमने 1982 में एक नाम चेंज करके फैसलाबाद रखा, उससे उसको क्या ख़तरा आया, जबकि 2000 में सिर्फ 18 साल के बाद वो इलाके जो बुनियादी तौर पर लायलपुर थे उनको दोबारा लायलपुर कर दिया गया। तो क्या फ़र्क पड़ गया इस सारे से शहर को? जो बुनियादी इलाके जो 8 बाज़ार और तहसील लायलपुर थी वो आज भी तहसील लायलपुर है।
जी अच्छा क्वेश्चन है सर। बुनियादी तौर पे आप करेक्ट कर लें कि ये 1977 में हुआ था। ये भुट्टो जी नहीं मैम, भुट्टो के दौर में शाह फैसल आइडेंटिटी की बात ये है कि आप जब किसी की गोद में डाल देते हैं कोई ऑनर, तो फिर वो अपनी जो है ना वो अपना सियासी एजेंडा, अपना मजहबी एजेंडा और अपनी बाकी जो अपने इंटरेस्ट हैं वो आप पे नाफिज कर देते हैं। तो आपने उनके गोद में डाल दिया। अब उन्होंने क्या किया कि आपके उन 8 बाज़ारों में हर बाज़ार के शुरू में या आखिर में उन्होंने कोई अपने उन लोगों से उनको फंडिंग करके अपने लोगों को तो उनको बिठा दिया। तो अब आप सुबह उठते हैं तो उस तरह का पीस और काम नहीं होता। आप अपना जो नैरेटिव है ना उसको खुलेआम नहीं कर सकते बयान। तो
ठीक है सफदर सर।
May I?
जी श्योर।
I am a student of history, and the point that I want to raise here, because there is lots of debate going on about the change of name, and being a historian, my simple question is, who was Lyell actually? And he was Mr. Sir James Broadwood Lyell, the British Lieutenant Governor of Punjab. Now my question is very simple, that you were saying, by the way, I'm dead against being named it Faisalabad as well. But when we talk, आपने अभी बात की कि हमने उनकी झोली में डाल दिया, तो लॉयल साहब ने भी तो इसको झोली में डाला. So अगर आपको आइडेंटिटी की बात करनी है, ज़मीन की बात करनी है, so it's better we talk what this region was called before the Lyell Sahab. The reason being, the whole world is going against the shackles that have been imposed upon us by the colonials, and the decolonization is the key that began in the beginning of 21st century, and we should be thankful to Africans who initiated the term of decolonization. I'm not questioning any identity. I'm not questioning any pride. Everybody has the right to do that. My simple question is, by associating ourselves with the name of Lyell, and I am yet to come across a colonial Raj Badshah, I call them Badshah, who were loyal and who were sincere to their colonized population. So please think beyond, and of course, you have every right to change Faisalabad. But this is my take on it.
Thank you. So would you like to Safdar Sahab to respond? Yes, this is basically comment. Okay, इधर जाएं, इधर इस तरफ.
फास्ट नहीं सर, सिर्फ 1876 में जब नाम रखा गया था, ये चिनाब कॉलोनी था.
जी सर, ठीक है, आप लंच के दौरान डिस्कशन कंटिन्यू कर सकते हैं.
जी सिकंदर जुल्करनैन सर.
जी, मेरा क्वेश्चन चेयर से है कि शेक्सपियर तो कहता है कि व्हाट्स इन द नेम, दैट विच वी कॉल अ रोज वुड स्मेल एज स्वीट बाय एनी अदर नेम. तो ये नाम के चेंज का इतना झगड़ा क्यों है? ये सर आपका टेक सर.
जी, मैं अभी तो मैडम ने मेरे सवाल के जवाब तर्जमानी की है. देखे ना कि अंग्रेज़ों ने भी तो किसी से छीना था ना ये नाम, तो इसलिए ये अगर बात पहुंचेगी तो दूर तक जाएगी, तो पीछे से पीछे चलते जाएंगे. तो मेरा ख्याल अभी हम सवाल ले लेते हैं. जी आप जी.
Good day. I'm Dr. Atif Hussain Chaudhary. I'm actually not related to this history, and I'm a consultant physician, member of Royal College of Physicians, but I'm a student of history. So yeah, this region, where nowadays is Faisalabad. I think I will continue in Urdu for my. आप पंजाबी च गल कर लांगे. चलो, ये जड़ा इलाका है फैसलाबाद जिन्हों कहते हैं, ये पहले लायलपुर सी. Actually, ये लायलपुर नहीं सी, ये दी एक बड़ी पुरानी तारीख है.
Sir, please direct question, no comments, please. You can continue your commenting during the lunch.
Why not we call this? Just it's my opinion and hypothesis. Why not we call this city Sandalpur or Chenabnagar? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
सांदल जी
सर, एक क्वेश्चन इसी में ऐड कर लीजिएगा.
I think
और इंटरेस्टिंगली मेरा क्वेश्चन भी अबाउट द चेंज ऑफ नेम है लायलपुर टू फैसलाबाद. तो उसमें जो दोनों स्कॉलर्स ने रिसर्च अपनी पेश की, उसमें एक में तो एंगल था कि कोई एथनिसिटी और वो नेशनलिज्म और इस तरह की चीज़ें उसमें है, रिलीजियस भी है. और दूसरी तरफ जो हमारे लास्ट स्कॉलर थे, उन्होंने उसमें बिल्कुल ही उसको कर दिया टैग कि ये पीछे कोई फंडिंग थी या उसमें कोई उनका इंटरेस्ट था. तो अगर उस टाइम पे जब ये नाम चेंज हुआ या उससे पहले कि अगर आप हिस्टोरिकली मतलब चीज़ें देखें, तो कोई उसका एविडेंस है, प्रूफ, या ये सिर्फ एक अजम्पशन है, या इसके पीछे क्या आपकी लॉजिक है? थैंक यू.
मेरा ख्याल है कि ये एक एकेडमिक कॉन्फ्रेंस है और इसमें जितने भी स्कॉलर्स अपनी गुफ्तगू कर रहे हैं ऑन द बेसिस ऑफ डॉक्यूमेंट्स कर रहे हैं, एविडेंस कर रहे हैं, सोर्सेज के ऊपर बेस करके ही कर रहे हैं। तो मेरा ख्याल है कि इसकी ऑथेंटिसिटी को हम क्वेश्चन नहीं कर सकते। जाहिर है कि ये एक सीरियस एकेडमिक डिस्कशन और डिस्कोर्स चल रहा है। तो जितनी भी यहाँ हमारी पेपर्स पढ़े जा रहे हैं ये ऑन द बेसिस ऑफ डॉक्यूमेंट्स हैं और ये हिस्ट्री कॉन्फ्रेंस है और हिस्ट्री बेस्ड ऑन डॉक्यूमेंट्स ही करती है। ठीक है
जी सर, I think you should conclude the session now and the discussion will be continued during the lunch. So
चले ठीक है, बहुत शुक्रिया। मैं जस्ट वांट टू थैंक्स टू द लायलपुर सोसाइटी, लिटरेरी सोसाइटी और लिटरेरी काउंसिल who invited me to chair this session. This is really honored for me and I am grateful to the organizers of the conference and congratulate to such a wonderful event arranged, and they gathered here scholars not only from inside the country but outside the country. So I think this is a really appreciable activity. Thank you.
thank you so much for the wonderful session conducted by Professor Dr. Mehboob Hussain. Lunch is ready. You can continue your discussion for an hour